I was 38, sitting alone in my kitchen staring at divorce papers that ended 14 years of marriage. No big fight, just quiet heartbreak. I thought my life was over. Broke, invisible, two kids to raise, no career left after being just a mom. Friends said, "You'll be fine," but I wasn't. I cried in the shower, ate cold pizza on the floor, overdrafted my bank account for coffee. Then I picked up an old sketchbook, and everything changed. Terrible dates, brutal rejections, a viral attack that almost broke me, one risky leap after another. What started as rock bottom turned into a design empire, real love, and a life I never imagined. If you're hurting right now, this story is proof. Your comeback is coming. Stick around, it gets real. My name is Sarah Jennings, and at 38 years old, I officially became a statistic. I was sitting at the kitchen island in the house we'd bought together 12 years earlier, the one in Alpharetta, just north of Atlanta, with the white cabinets we'd painted ourselves one sweaty summer weekend, and the granite countertop that still had the faint scratch from when our daughter, Mia, was learning to use scissors. The divorce papers were open on my laptop screen, glowing blue in the dim morning light. My ex-husband, David, had already e-signed them 2 days earlier from his new apartment downtown. No fanfare, no last-minute phone call begging to reconsider, just a clean digital signature and a polite email from his lawyer. All terms agreed, final decree forthcoming. I stared at the cursor blinking next to my name. The kids, Mia, 12, and Ethan, 9, were already on the school bus. The house was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator cycling on and off, that low mechanical hum that suddenly sounded like laughter at my expense. I reached for my coffee mug, but my hand shook so badly I set it down untouched. 14 years of marriage. 14 years of shared mortgages, holiday photos, parent-teacher conferences, late-night fights about money that always ended in apologies, and sex that felt like truce rather than passion. 14 years of slowly disappearing into the role of wife and mom until I couldn't remember what Sarah alone even looked like. I slid my wedding band off. The skin underneath was pale, indented, like a scar that had never healed right. I placed the ring on the counter next to the fruit bowl, still full of apples nobody ate, and watched it catch the light. It looked small, insignificant, the same way I felt. Tears came fast and hot. I didn't sob dramatically, I just leaked. Shoulders shaking, nose running, the kind of ugly crying you only do when no one's watching. I thought about calling my sister and Charlotte, but she'd say the right things. "You're strong, you'll be fine." And I didn't want platitudes. I wanted someone to tell me this wasn't the end, that 40 wasn't too late, that losing the house, the routine, the identity wasn't the same as losing myself. But no one called. The silence stretched. I wiped my face with the sleeve of my old Georgia Tech hoodie, David's alma mater, not mine, and opened a new tab. Typed "starting over after divorce at 38." Google served up the usual, cheerful articles with bullet points, smiling stock photos of women jogging at sunrise, quotes about phoenixes rising from ashes. I hated them all. They felt like propaganda. Then I clicked on a blog. The title was simple. Rock bottom is where the real building begins. No stock photo, just black text on white. The writer, someone named Jenna, started with her own story. 42, two kids, husband left for his 28-year-old assistant. She described the first night alone in a rented condo, eating cereal straight from the box, staring at the ceiling, wondering if she'd ever feel okay again. She wrote, "I thought divorce meant failure. I thought it meant I was unlovable, undesirable, done. But rock bottom isn't punishment, it's foundation. You can't build anything solid on cracked ground. Sometimes life has to strip you down to bare concrete before you can pour new footings." I read the whole post twice. Then I scrolled her archives. She talked about small wins, learning to change a tire, opening her own checking account, crying in therapy without apologizing for it. She didn't pretend it was easy. She admitted the nights she drank too much wine and scrolled her ex's Instagram, but she kept going. I bookmarked the page, closed the laptop, walked to the sink, and rinsed my coffee mug like it was any other Tuesday. The rest of the day blurred. I picked up the kids from school, listened to their stories about recess and math tests, made spaghetti, helped with homework. And when the house got quiet again, I opened that Boast post one more time. Rock bottom is where the real building begins. I still didn't fully believe it, but for the first time in years, I wanted to. And that tiny wanting, that was enough to start. 3 months after the ring came off, I loaded the last box into my sister's borrowed minivan and drove away from the house that had once felt like home. The kids waved from the front porch, David standing behind them, arms crossed, expression neutral. No dramatic goodbye, just a quiet handoff of keys and a promise to pick them up for his weekend in 2 days. My new place was in Decatur, a 15-minute drive from the old neighborhood, so school drop-offs wouldn't be torture. It was a 1-bedroom walk-up above a coffee shop, peeling beige paint on the exterior, creaky wooden stairs, a faint smell of roasted beans that never quite left the air. Rent was $1,200 a month, utilities included, which sounded reasonable until I did the math on my new part-time paycheck from the boutique. After groceries, gas, and child support contributions, I'd have maybe $200 left each month, if nothing broke, if the kids didn't need new shoes, if I didn't get sick. I carried the boxes up alone. The landlord had left the key under the mat like he promised. Inside, scuffed hardwood floors, one window overlooking a parking lot, a galley kitchen with a stove that looked older than me, and a bathroom so small I could brush my teeth while sitting on the toilet. The previous tenant had left a single crooked shelf above the sink. I set my coffee maker on the counter, plugged it in, and stared at the empty space. That first night, after the kids were tucked into David's guest room for their first sleepover there, I sat on the floor amid half-unpacked boxes and ate cold pepperoni pizza straight from the box. No plates, no napkins, just me, cross-legged on the bare floor, grease on my fingers, staring at the wall. The silence was deafening. No kids laughing, no TV in the background, no David's footsteps coming home from work. Just the hum of the mini fridge and the occasional car door slamming in the lot below. I cried again, quieter this time. The kind of tears that come from exhaustion more than grief. I thought about calling a friend, any friend, but everyone's lives had kept moving while mine had stalled. Jessica was on a girls' trip in Nashville. Lauren had just gotten promoted and was celebrating with her husband at some fancy steakhouse. Even my mom, who'd offered to fly down from Ohio, had said, "You'll be fine, honey, you're strong." I didn't feel strong. I felt like a ghost haunting my own life. Around midnight, the bank app pinged, overdraft alert, $37 fee for a $4.89 coffee I'd bought that morning. I stared at the notification until the screen went dark. Then I crawled into the inflatable mattress I'd bought from Target, still in its plastic, smelling like new vinyl, and pulled the thin comforter over my head. Sleep didn't come easy. Every creak of the building sounded like someone trying to break in. Every car passing felt like judgment. The next morning, I woke with swollen eyes and a crick in my neck. I showered in lukewarm water. The hot lasted maybe 3 minutes, pulled on my work polo and drove to the boutique. Smiled at customers, folded sweaters, pretended everything was fine. When a regular asked how I was doing, I said, "Great," with the brightness I'd perfected over years of playdates and PTA meetings. But inside, panic simmered. How was I going to do this? How was I going to pay for Mia's dance classes, Ethan's asthma inhaler refills, my own therapy appointments? The divorce lawyer had been expensive, $8,000 in fees, and alimony was minimal because David's salary wasn't extravagant. I had no savings left. Credit cards were maxed from the move. That evening, when the kids came over for their first night in the new place, I tried to make it special. I bought cheap string lights from the dollar store and hung them around the living room wall. We ordered Chinese takeout, egg rolls and lo mein, and ate on paper plates on the floor like a picnic. Mia wrinkled her nose at the apartment smell. Ethan asked if we could get a dog. I laughed it off. Maybe someday, buddy. After they fell asleep on the air mattress, I gave them the bed. I took the couch cushions on the floor. I sat in the tiny kitchen with my laptop open. The bank balance stared back, $214.37. I opened a new document and started typing. "Dear Sarah, you're scared. You're broke. You feel like a failure. But you're not dead. You're breathing. That's step 1. Step 2, stop waiting for rescue. No prince is coming. No magic check. Just you." I wrote for an hour, ugly, rambling thoughts, about the marriage I'd let fade, about the dreams I'd shelved. I used to sketch fashion designs in college. Now I folded other people's clothes, about how invisible I'd become. I saved the file as private, do not read. No one would ever see it. It was just for me, a place to scream without sound. The next week was survival mode. I signed up for every shift I could get at the boutique. I ate ramen and peanut butter sandwiches. I walked to the library to use free Wi-Fi instead of paying for internet at home. I cried in the shower every night so the kids wouldn't hear when they visited. But I also started small routines, making coffee every morning like it was a ritual, not a luxury, walking around the block after dinner to clear my head, reading one chapter of a self-help book from the library each night. One evening, after a particularly long shift, I came home to find a voicemail from my old college roommate, Tara. She'd seen my Facebook post about the move and wanted to check in. I called her back, voice shaking. She didn't say, "You'll be fine." She said, "This sucks. It's allowed to suck, but you're tougher than you think." We talked for 2 hours. She reminded me of the girl I used to be, the one who stayed up all night sketching, who backpacked Europe alone after graduation, who laughed loud and dreamed big. I hadn't thought about that girl in years. After we hung up, I pulled out an old sketchbook from a box I hadn't unpacked yet. The pages were yellowed, filled with pencil drawings of dresses, city scenes, abstract patterns. I flipped through them, fingers tracing lines I'd drawn when life still felt wide open. I didn't draw anything new that night, but I left the sketchbook on the kitchen table instead of burying it again. Rock bottom didn't feel like inspiration. It felt like drowning in slow motion. But somewhere in the quiet, in the cold pizza and the overdraft fees and the empty apartment, a tiny shift happened. I stopped waiting for the pain to end. I started wondering what I could build in its place. Therapy wasn't my idea. My divorce lawyer had slipped it into the settlement agreement like it was no big deal. Both parties agreed to participate in co-parenting counseling for 6 months, with individual sessions recommended. David nodded like it was paperwork. I rolled my eyes, but the judge signed off, and suddenly I had a standing appointment every Tuesday at 4 p.m. with Dr. Elena Ramirez, a soft-spoken woman in her 50s, whose office smelled faintly of lavender and whose walls were covered in abstract art that looked expensive, but probably wasn't. The first session, I sat on the edge of the gray couch like I might bolt at any second. Dr. Ramirez asked gentle questions. How are you sleeping? How are the kids adjusting? What does your day-to-day look like now? I gave short answers. I didn't want to unpack the whole mess in 50 minutes, but she didn't push. She just listened, really listened. No judgment, no "you'll be fine," just quiet space. By the 4th session, the dam cracked. I started talking about how I'd lost myself somewhere between Mia's first steps and Ethan's kindergarten graduation. How I'd stopped drawing, stopped reading novels for fun, stopped wearing anything that didn't scream practical mom. How David and I had become roommates who shared a mortgage and a calendar. How I told myself it was normal, adult, responsible. Dr. Ramirez leaned forward slightly. Before you became wife and mom, what did you love? What lit you up? I stared at the carpet. I don't know. She didn't fill the silence. She let it sit. That question followed me home like a shadow. That night, after tucking the kids into the pull-out couch in the living room, they still hated sleeping in the tiny bedroom alone. I dug through the storage boxes I'd shoved against the wall. At the bottom of one labeled "College Stuff, Don't Open," I found it. My old sketchbook. Black cover, edges frayed, pages thick with pencil and ink. I opened it on the kitchen table under the single bulb light. The drawings were from my early 20s, bold lines, fashion sketches, cityscapes of Atlanta at dusk, abstract patterns that had no name but felt alive. I remembered the late nights in my dorm, music blasting, charcoal smudging my fingers, feeling like anything was possible. I flipped slowly. Some pages made me smile. Others made my chest ache. I'd stopped drawing when David and I got serious. He'd called it a hobby. I'd called it impractical. Life got busy. Wedding, house, babies, bills. The sketchbook went into a box and stayed there. I closed it, but I didn't put it away. The next Tuesday, I brought it to therapy. Dr. Ramirez raised an eyebrow when I set it on the coffee table between us. I used to draw, I said, a lot. Then I stopped. She nodded. Why? Because it felt selfish. There were diapers to change, lunches to pack, a husband who needed dinner on the table. Art didn't pay bills. And now? Now I have bills anyway, and no husband to cook for. She smiled, just a little. What would happen if you picked up a pencil again? I laughed, a short, nervous sound. I'd probably suck at it. It's been 15 years. Maybe, or maybe you'd remember something important. I left that session unsettled, not in a bad way, just stirred. That weekend, the kids were with David. The apartment felt too quiet. I sat at the kitchen table with the sketchbook open and a cheap mechanical pencil from the dollar store. I didn't know what to draw, so I started small, the coffee mug in front of me, steam curling up, then the string lights I'd hung, then the view out the window, the parking lot, a stray cat sitting on a dumpster, streetlights buzzing orange. It wasn't good. The lines were shaky, proportions off, but my hand remembered the motion, the scratch of graphite on paper, the tiny thrill when a shape appeared where there had been blank space. I kept going, night after night. Doodles turned into quick sketches, a dress I'd seen in a magazine window, the curve of Mia's cheek when she slept, Ethan's messy hair after soccer practice. Nothing I'd show anyone, just for me. Then one evening, scrolling Facebook on my phone, bad habit, I know, I saw a post from Tara, my college roommate who'd moved to Nashville and become a graphic designer. She was sharing her latest portfolio, sleek logos, vibrant social media templates. I liked the post. Then on impulse, I messaged her. Hey, remember when we used to stay up drawing stupid comics? Your stuff is incredible now. She replied within minutes. Sarah, Omong, hi. Yes, I remember. You were always better at people and movement. What are you up to these days? I hesitated, then typed the truth. Divorced, living in a tiny apartment, working retail, rediscovering an old sketchbook. Dots danced. Then, girl, your style was always fire. Send me something, no pressure, just curious. My heart hammered. I took a photo of the coffee mug sketch, nothing fancy, just pencil on yellowed paper, and hit send before I could overthink it. Her response came fast. Holy crap, this is still you. The line work, the shading, nothing's changed. Why aren't you doing this professionally? You could kill it in branding or illustration. I laughed out loud in the empty apartment. Because I have no clue how, and I'm broke and scared. Scared is normal, broke is fixable. Start small. Post one thing on Instagram, see what happens. I stared at the message. Part of me wanted to delete the thread. Another part, the part that had been quiet for years, whispered, what if? That night I created an Instagram account, @SarahSketchesAgain, private at first. I uploaded the coffee mug drawing. Caption, Day 1 of remembering how to draw. Be gentle. No likes, no comments, just me and the quiet. But I felt something shift, a tiny crack of light in the dark apartment. Not hope yet, not confidence, just possibility. The suspense was in the waiting to see if the crack would widen or close, waiting to see if I had the courage to keep drawing, waiting to see if the girl who used to dream big could still show up. I didn't know the answer, but for the first time since the ring came off, I wanted to find out.
6 months into single life, I realized survival wasn't enough. I needed momentum. Retail at the boutique paid the bills, barely, but it left me hollow. Every shift folding cardigans and smiling at women who reminded me of my old self felt like wearing someone else's skin. I kept sketching at night, nothing fancy, just filling pages with whatever came out, but the drawings stayed private, until I decided they shouldn't. I started applying for graphic design jobs, entry level, junior, anything. My resume was thin. A bachelor's in fine arts from Georgia State, unused for 15 years, freelance mom projects, birthday invites, holiday cards I'd made for friends, and now this retail gig. I got rejection after rejection. Not enough professional experience. We're looking for someone with a current portfolio. One email even said, your skills seem dated. Consider updating your software knowledge. Each no stung like a fresh cut. I'd sit in my car after work staring at the steering wheel, wondering if I was delusional for thinking I could start over at 39. But I kept applying, tweaked the resume, took free online tutorials on Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop during lunch breaks, practicing on my ancient laptop that wheezed like an old man. Then, miracle. A small marketing agency in Midtown Atlanta called Creative Edge emailed back. They needed a part-time junior designer, 20 hours a week, $18 an hour, remote 3 days. No benefits, no guarantees. I interviewed over Zoom in my kitchen, wearing a blazer over my pajama top, hair in a messy bun. The creative director, a no-nonsense woman named Carla, asked to see my sketchbook. I hesitated, then held up pages to the camera. Raw pencil work, nothing polished. She didn't laugh. She said, there's heart here. Technique can be taught. Heart can't. Start Monday. I cried after hanging up. Quiet, grateful tears. The kids were with David that week, so I celebrated alone with a bottle of cheap rosé and takeout Thai. I told no one yet. I wanted to prove I could do it first. Monday arrived. First task, redesign a local coffee shop's loyalty card. Simple, but Carla's feedback was brutal. Too safe. Where's the personality? I reworked it 3 times. Second project, social media graphics for a boutique gym. She called them boring corporate. I stayed up until 2 a.m. iterating, eyes burning, until I nailed something vibrant and bold. She finally said, "Now we're talking." The learning curve was steep. Deadlines came fast. Software glitches 8 hours. I made mistakes, sent the wrong file once, misspelled a client name another time. Carla didn't yell, but her silence felt worse. I cried in the shower again, convinced I'd fail and prove everyone right, that I was too old, too out of practice, too broken to start again. But I didn't quit. Nights became a blur of freelance side hustles. A neighbor needed a logo for her Etsy candle shop. I charged $75, my first paid design gig. Then a friend's husband asked for business cards. Word spread slowly. Small jobs trickled in. $50 here, $120 there. Enough to cover the electric bill 1 month. Enough to buy the kids new backpacks without dipping into grocery money. Confidence built in tiny increments. A client texted, "Love it, exactly what I pictured." Another left a 5-star review on my barely started freelance profile. Each one felt like proof I wasn't invisible. Then came the twist that almost derailed everything. David started dating someone new. Her name was Lauren, blonde, fit, 32, a yoga instructor. He didn't hide it, posted photos on Instagram, them at the Beltline, laughing over brunch at our old favorite spot in Virginia Highland, her hand on his arm at a Hawks game. The kids told me casually, "Dad's girlfriend is nice. She does downward dog really good." I smiled through the knife twist in my chest. I scrolled her profile late one night. Stupid, I know. Perfect life, perfect smile, perfect everything I wasn't. Jealousy hit like a tidal wave, hot, irrational, suffocating. I wanted to scream, to text him and ask why he got to move on so easily while I was still figuring out how to pay rent. I wanted to delete every app, crawl into bed and never come out. Instead, I channeled it. That weekend, the kids were with him. I opened Illustrator and started a personal project. No client, no deadline. I designed a mock branding package for a fictional women's empowerment coaching brand. Bold colors, strong typography, images of women standing tall, unbroken. I poured every ounce of rage, hurt, and fragile hope into it. By Sunday night, I had a full deck: logo, color palette, social templates, even a fake website mock-up. Monday morning, I showed it to Carla, not as an assignment, just because I needed someone to see it. She stared at her screen for a long minute, then looked up. "This is your best work yet. Why isn't this in your portfolio?" I paused, because it's personal. Personal sells. Clients want to feel something. This makes me feel something. She paused. "Send it to me. I'm forwarding it to a friend who runs a startup accelerator. They need branding for their women's focused program." I blinked. "Really? Really? And Sarah, stop hiding your story. It's your strength, not your weakness." 3 weeks later, that friend called. Her name was Priya. She ran Empower Her, a nonprofit helping women re-enter the workforce after life interruptions, divorce, caregiving, layoffs. They loved my mock-up. They wanted the real thing. Budget, $4,500, my biggest paycheck ever. I took the job, worked nights while the kids slept, delivered early. Priya cried when she saw the final files. "This feels like it was made for us." Because it was. That check covered rent for 2 months, new shoes for the kids, and my first real savings account deposit in years. More important, it proved something to me. I wasn't dated. I wasn't broken. I was evolving. The job at Creative Edge still pushed me to my limits. Deadlines still made me panic. But now, when doubt crept in, I had evidence: a growing portfolio, happy clients, money in the bank, and a spark that hadn't existed before. David's new life still hurt sometimes. Seeing their posts still stung. But the hurt didn't stop me anymore. It fueled me. And that shift, that was the real beginning. A year after the divorce finalized, the loneliness started creeping in differently. Not the sharp, gut punch kind from the early months, but a quieter ache, like missing a limb you'd learned to live without until someone asked how you were really doing. Friends meant well. My sister kept texting, "You deserve to be happy again." Jessica from book club said, "You're too young to give up on love." Even Carla at work nudged me during a slow afternoon. "Get back out there, Sarah. The apps aren't as bad as everyone says." I caved. First app, Bumble. I spent an hour crafting a bio that sounded confident but not desperate. Divorced mom of two, rediscovering life one sketch at a time. Love coffee, good books, and bad reality TV. Looking for someone who can laugh at life's plot twists. Photos, me smiling at the camera in a park, taken by Mia. One with the kids cropped out. One of my latest sketch framed on the wall. I hit go live and immediately regretted it. Date 1, Mark, 42, divorced, no drama. We met at a brewery in Inman Park. He spent the whole hour talking about his ex-wife's crazy custody demands and how women always want more alimony. I nodded politely, sipped my IPA, and excused myself after 45 minutes. He texted later, "You seemed quiet. Everything okay?" I unmatched. Date 2, Tyler, 39, entrepreneur. Mid-conversation, he casually mentioned his wife was out of town. Wife, not ex. I froze. "You're married?" He shrugged. "Separated. It's basically over." I paid my half of the coffee and left, blocked before I reached the car. Date 3, Chris, 41, teacher. Seemed normal. We met for dinner at a casual Italian place. 10 minutes in, he asked, "So, are you over your ex yet? Because I don't want baggage." I stared. "I have 2 kids. That's not baggage. That's my life." He backpedaled. I didn't stay for dessert. By date 4, a guy who showed up 40 minutes late and spent the evening scrolling his phone, I deleted every app, swore off men, told my friends, "I'm done. I'd rather be alone than deal with this circus." They nodded sympathetically. I meant it. Then came the networking event. It was a women in business mixer hosted by the Atlanta chapter of a national entrepreneur group. I went because Priya from Empower Her had invited me, said it would be good for my fledgling design studio to meet potential clients. I wore my one nice blazer, jeans, and boots that didn't scream desperate single mom. The room was full of confident women in power suits, exchanging business cards like currency. I felt out of place, but stayed anyway. That's when I met Jake. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was a guest speaker on building resilient teams after change. Tall, dark hair streaked with gray, quiet voice that carried without shouting, mid-40s, no wedding ring. He talked about losing his wife to cancer 5 years earlier, raising his teenage daughter alone, and how failure had taught him more than success ever could. No self-pity, just honesty. After his talk, people swarmed him. I hung back, sipping sparkling water, sketching idle doodles on a napkin. He noticed, walked over. "Mind if I see what you're drawing?" I flipped the napkin over. Nothing special, just a quick outline of the room, people laughing, glasses clinking. "That's really good," he said. "You caught the energy." I laughed nervously, just messing around. We talked, not flirting, just talking, about design, about starting over, about single parenting, about how grief and divorce aren't the same, but they both teach you how to rebuild from scratch. He asked real questions, listened without interrupting. When the event ended, he asked for my number. Not for a date, just to keep in touch. I know people who need branding help. I gave it, figured nothing would come of it. He texted the next day, "Great meeting you. Coffee sometime? No pressure, just conversation." I stared at the message for 20 minutes, then typed, "Sure, when?" We met at a small cafe near Piedmont Park. Saturday morning, kids with David. I arrived early, heart pounding like a teenager. He was already there, 2 coffees waiting, black for him, latte for me. He'd guessed right. We talked for 3 hours. No games, no oversharing. He told me about his daughter, Riley, 14, obsessed with astronomy. I told him about Mia's dance recitals and Ethan's obsession with dinosaurs. We laughed about bad first dates. He'd had his share too. When we parted, he hugged me. Quick, warm, no lingering touch. He said, "This was nice. Let's do it again?" I said yes. Over the next months, coffee turned into walks in the park. Walks turned into dinners at his place. Riley approved. She said, "I have cool art vibes." No rush, no pressure. He respected my boundaries, never pushed for more than I was ready to give. When I had bad days, like a client ghosted or David canceled a weekend last minute, he listened, sent memes, brought soup when the kids were sick and I was exhausted. Suspense built quietly. Every time he texted good morning or planned something small, I waited for the other shoe to drop, for him to disappear, for him to decide I was too complicated, too much baggage, too scarred. But he didn't. One evening, after the kids were asleep and we were sitting on my tiny balcony with cheap wine, I finally asked, "Why me? I'm a mess. 2 kids, a shaky business, emotional roller coaster. You could have anyone." He looked at me, really looked. "Because you're real. You don't pretend everything's perfect. You show up anyway. That's rare." And honestly, I was scared too. After losing Sarah, my wife, I didn't think I'd ever want this again. But you make me want to try. Not because you need saving, because being around you feels like coming home. Tears came. I didn't hide them. He reached for my hand. I let him take it. We kissed that night. Slow, careful, like we were both testing if the world would end. It didn't. Dating again wasn't the fairy tale I'd imagined in my 20s. It was messy, scary, full of doubt. But with Jake, it started to feel possible. Like maybe I hadn't missed my chance at love. Like maybe I was just getting started. 2 years after the divorce papers were signed, my little freelance side hustle had quietly grown legs. What started as $75 logo gigs for neighbors had turned into steady clients, small businesses, nonprofits, even a couple of local influencers who needed consistent branding. I was pulling in enough each month to cover rent, groceries, kids' activities, and still sock away a few $100s. The apartment no longer felt like a cage. It felt like mine. The sketchbook on the kitchen table had become a portfolio binder. Instagram at Sarah Sketches Again had 2,800 followers, mostly women who commented things like, "This gives me hope," and "You're inspiring me to start again." But I was still splitting my soul between the agency job and my own work. Creative Edge paid steady, offered structure, health insurance. My freelance paid unpredictably, but felt alive. Every time I finished a client project at 2 a.m., I felt a rush I hadn't known since college. Carla noticed. During a performance review, she said, "You're killing it here, but I can see your heart's elsewhere. If you ever want to go full-time freelance, I'll give you a glowing reference. Just don't leave me hanging on deadlines." I laughed it off, but the seed was planted. Then came the offer that forced the decision. Priya from Empower Her called one Tuesday afternoon. "Sarah, we're launching a national expansion, online courses, mentorship program, the works. We want you to handle all branding and course visuals. Full retainer, $6,000 a month for 6 months, with potential to extend. But we need someone dedicated, no side job. Can you go all in?" My heart stopped. $6,000 a month was life-changing, enough to move to a 2-bedroom so the kids could have their own rooms, enough to pay off the last credit card debt from the divorce, enough to breathe. But it meant quitting Creative Edge. No safety net, no guaranteed paycheck if a client delayed or disappeared. I had 2 kids depending on me. Rent, utilities, Mia's dance tuition, Ethan's new glasses. I told Priya I'd think about it. Hung up, stared at the wall. That night, Jake came over after the kids were in bed. We sat on the balcony with takeout containers and cheap red wine. I told him everything. He listened the way he always did. Quiet, steady. When I finished, he asked one question. "What scares you more? Staying safe and regretting it, or jumping and maybe falling?" I swallowed. Falling. The kids need stability. I can't fail them. He nodded. "You won't. You've already built something from nothing once. You can do it again. And you're not alone anymore. I've got your back. Financially, emotionally, whatever you need." I looked at him. "You'd really help if things got tight?" Without hesitation. "But I don't think you'll need it. You've got fire in you, Sarah." Clients were slow to pay. One ghosted entirely after I delivered finals. Rent was due. Groceries were ramen and canned soup again. I hid the stress from the kids, but Jake saw it. He showed up one evening with a bag of groceries and said, "This isn't charity, it's partnership. Let me help until the cash flow evens out." I cried in his arms, not from shame, from relief. Then the break came. I posted a time-lapse video on Instagram of me designing the Empower Her course graphics, raw sketches to final polished assets. Caption: 2 years ago, I was folding sweaters in a boutique. Today, I'm building a brand that helps women rebuild. If you're scared to leap, this is your sign. The post went semi-viral, shared by Priya, reposted by a few influencers, views climbed to 40,000.
Comments flooded. Inquiries, collabs, new client leads. Within weeks, 3 more retainers landed. A women's wellness app, $3,200 a month. A local bookstore chain rebrand, $4,800 project fee. And a podcast network needing episode art, $1,500 a month recurring. Revenue tripled in 30 days. I signed the lease on a 2-bedroom townhouse in Decatur. Small backyard, space for the kids to run, a real office nook for my desk and drawing tablet. Moving day, Mia and Ethan helped unpack boxes, laughing as they claimed bedrooms. Jake showed up with pizza and helped assemble IKEA furniture. When the kids were asleep, he pulled me onto the couch and said, "Look what you built. All you." I looked around, at the string lights I'd hung again, at the framed sketches on the walls, at the life that finally felt like mine. "I couldn't have without you believing I could," I whispered. He kissed my forehead. "You did the work. I just held the flashlight." That night, I updated my website. Sarah Jennings Design Studio. Clean, professional, portfolio full, testimonials growing, a new about page that didn't hide the divorce. I started over at 38, broke, scared, invisible. I learned that rock bottom isn't the end. It's where you decide who you're going to become. If you're ready to rebuild, I'd love to help tell your story visually. The inquiries kept coming. I hired my first virtual assistant, a single mom herself, to handle admin so I could focus on creative. Revenue stabilized. Savings grew. I paid off the last divorce-related debt and framed the zero balance statement next to my old wedding ring box, both symbols of endings that led to beginnings. The risk had paid off, not because everything went perfectly, because I chose to leap anyway. And when doubt crept back in late at night, I'd look at the sleeping kids, at Jake's text saying, "Proud of you," at the growing bank balance, and remember, I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was building. And the life on the other side of the jump, it was better than anything I'd imagined when the ring came off.
Success has a way of feeling fragile when you fought so hard to get it. By the time my design studio hit its stride, 3 steady retainers, a growing wait list, enough cash flow to hire a part-time virtual assistant, I started believing the worst was behind me. The 2-bedroom townhouse felt like home. The kids thrived in their new rooms. Jake and I were talking about blending families someday. Slowly, carefully. I even started dreaming bigger, hiring my first full-time designer, maybe opening a small physical studio downtown. Then, the sabotage came. It started with an email from a former client, a boutique owner I'd done branding for 6 months earlier. Subject: cease and desist intellectual property theft. My stomach dropped. She accused me of stealing her logo concept for another client's project. Attached, side-by-side comparisons of my new work and her old files. The similarities were there, same color palette, similar font pairing, but it was coincidence, not theft. I'd never copied her. I'd never even saved her files after delivery. I replied immediately, polite, professional, explaining the independent creative process, offering to show timestamps and original sketches. She didn't respond. Instead, she posted publicly on Instagram and LinkedIn, screenshots, captions dripping with betrayal. Trusted a freelancer with my brand vision. She turned around and sold it to my competitor. Ladies, protect your ideas. Tagged me, tagged her followers. The post went viral in Atlanta's small business community. Within hours, the comments exploded. "Wow, shady. Cancel her. Once a thief, always a thief. Unfollowed and reported." My inbox filled with hate mail. My Instagram DMs turned toxic. One anonymous message read, "You're a fraud. Hope your kids see what kind of mother you are." I stared at the screen until my vision blurred. The trolls didn't know me. They didn't know the nights I'd stayed up perfecting every pixel. They didn't know I'd rebuilt from zero. But the words landed anyway. Doubt crept in fast. What if she was right? What if I'd unconsciously borrowed too much? What if I wasn't good enough after all? The old voice, the one that whispered I was unlovable, invisible, a failure, came roaring back. I stopped answering client emails, stopped posting, stopped sketching. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every critique, every mistake, wondering if I'd built my whole new life on sand. Jake noticed first. He came over one evening with takeout and found me on the couch in the dark, phone face down, eyes red. He didn't ask what was wrong. He just sat beside me, pulled me into his chest, and let me cry until my shirt was soaked. I feel like I'm drowning again, like everything I built is crumbling. He held me tighter. "It's not crumbling, it's being tested.
You're allowed to feel scared, but you're not alone in it." I pushed him away, gently but firmly. "I don't want to drag you down with me. You deserve someone who's got their shit together." He didn't move. I didn't fall for someone with perfect shit together. I fell for you, the woman who keeps showing up even when she's terrified. We're in this together, no bailing when it gets hard. I cried harder then, not just from the attack, but from the relief of being seen, really seen. The next day, I went back to Dr. Ramirez. I hadn't been in months. Things had felt good. Now I sat in her office, shaking, spilling everything: the accusation, the hate, the fear that I'd never be enough. She listened, then asked the question that always cut deepest. "What story are you telling yourself right now?" "I'm a fraud. I don't belong here, that I should quit before I hurt anyone else." "And is that story true?" I swallowed. "I don't know." She leaned forward. "Let's look at the evidence. You have happy clients. You have testimonials. You have original work timestamps. You have a portfolio built from scratch after starting over at rock bottom. One person's accusation doesn't erase all of that." I nodded slowly. "But it hurts. It's allowed to hurt, but don't let it rewrite your truth." That night, alone, after the kids were asleep, I did something symbolic. I gathered every old wedding photo I still had hidden in a shoebox under the bed and took them to the kitchen sink, lit a match, watched them curl and blacken one by one. The flames were small, controlled, safe, but watching our smiling faces disappear felt like release. Not hate for David, not bitterness, just goodbye to the version of me who'd stayed small to keep the peace. The next morning, I fought back. I posted a public response, calm, professional, factual, shared screenshots of original sketches, delivery emails, timestamps, offered to mediate with a neutral third party if needed, ended with, "I believe in building women up, not tearing them down. If my work inspired someone else, that's the highest compliment. But let's keep the conversation honest and kind." The post gained traction, not from drama, but from support. Clients I'd worked with years ago chimed in. "Sarah's integrity is unmatched. She's the real deal." Priya shared it with a caption, "This is what resilience looks like." Followers doubled overnight. New inquiries poured in. The original client never responded publicly again. Whether she backed down or just moved on, I don't know. But the damage was contained. The business survived, stronger. I hired my first full-time designer, a 32-year-old single mom who'd been freelancing while raising twins. Her name was Lena. She started the next week. We celebrated with coffee and donuts in my new home office. The kids drew welcome signs. Jake brought flowers. That night, Jake and I sat on the couch after everyone was asleep. He pulled me close. "You didn't just survive that. You turned it into fuel." I rested my head on his shoulder. "I almost didn't." "But you did, and that's what matters." The dark night had come. It had almost broken me. But in the wreckage, I found something unbreakable. Myself. And that was the real victory.
3 years after the divorce, love didn't arrive like a thunderclap. It arrived like sunrise. Slow, quiet, warm enough to notice only after it had already changed the light in the room. Jake and I had been dating for almost 2 years by then. Coffee dates turned into weekend hikes, movie nights turned into lazy Sundays where he'd read the paper while I sketched at the kitchen table and the kids played video games in the next room. Riley, his daughter, started calling me Sarah instead of Miss Jennings. Mia and Ethan asked when Mr. Jake was coming over next. We weren't rushing family blending. We were letting it happen naturally, like roots finding their way through soil. But love, the real kind, doesn't stay comfortable forever. It asks questions. One crisp October afternoon, we took the kids to Stone Mountain for a picnic. Leaves were turning gold and red, air sharp with fall. The kids ran ahead, chasing each other with sticks, laughing so hard they doubled over. Jake and I walked behind, hands linked, quiet in the way comfortable couples can be. He stopped under a big oak, turned to me, and pulled a small velvet box from his jacket pocket. My breath caught. He didn't drop to one knee dramatically. He just held the box between us, open. Inside, a simple solitaire diamond, nothing flashy, set in a thin gold band. Classic, timeless, exactly my taste. "Sarah," he said, voice steady but eyes shining,
I've spent 5 years thinking I'd never feel this again. Then you walked into that networking event with your sketchbook and your quiet strength, and everything changed. I don't want to spend the rest of my life without you. I want to build a home with you. Really build it. Marry me? Tears came fast. I looked at the ring, then at him, then back at the kids laughing in the distance. Everything I'd lost, everything I'd rebuilt, led to this moment. Not perfect, not fairy tale, just real. Yes, I whispered, then louder. Yes. He slipped the ring on my finger. It fit perfectly. We kissed, slow, deep, the kind that says more than words ever could. The kids noticed, ran back, squealing. Mia hugged us both. Ethan high-fived Jake. Riley rolled her eyes but smiled. That night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on the balcony with the ring catching moonlight. I wasn't scared of marriage again. I was scared of losing myself in it. So I made rules, non-negotiable ones. We do therapy together before the wedding, I told Jake the next morning over coffee. Regular check-ins, no secrets. And when we blend families, it's slow. The kids come first, always. He nodded without hesitation. Agreed, all of it. We started couples counseling the following week. Dr. Ramirez again. She knew my history, knew Jake's grief. We talked about triggers, my fear of disappearing, his fear of loss. We learned to fight fair, to name needs without blame. It wasn't always easy. Some sessions ended in tears, but we showed up. The wedding was small. Backyard of the townhouse in late spring. String lights, wildflowers, 40 people for 40 people. No big venue, no expensive dress. I wore a simple ivory sheath I found on sale, flats instead of heels. The kids walked me down the aisle, Mia on one side, Ethan on the other. Jake waited under a wooden arch we'd built ourselves a weekend before. Riley stood beside him as best woman. I walked alone in spirit, not because I had no one, but because I'd learned I didn't need anyone to complete me. I chose to share my life, not give it away. Vows were short, honest. Jake, I promise to love you on the good days and the hard ones, to hold space when you need to rebuild, to never ask you to be smaller than you are. Me, I promise to choose you every day, to fight for us, to keep growing, together, to let you in, even when I'm scared. We kissed to cheers and kids throwing flower petals. No honeymoon right away, just a long weekend in the North Georgia mountains, cabin with a hot tub, no phones. We talked, laughed, made love like people who knew what they'd almost lost. Back home, life settled into something new. Jake moved in gradually, his clothes first, then his books, then the rest. The kids adjusted in waves. Excitement, jealousy, acceptance. We set family rules. Sunday dinners mandatory, no phones at the table, therapy if anyone needed it. My business kept growing. I hired a second designer, landed a national women's magazine spread on divorce-era entrepreneurs. Revenue hit 6 figures annually. I started a scholarship fund, small grants for single moms going back to school or starting businesses. Every time I wrote a check, I thought of the woman who'd once overdrafted $4.89 for coffee. One evening after the kids were in bed, Jake and I sat on the porch swing we'd installed. Stars out, crickets loud. He pulled me close. You okay? He asked. More than okay, I said. I'm whole. He kissed my temple. You always were. You just forgot for a while. I looked at the ring on my finger. Simple, steady, like us. Falling in love the second time wasn't fireworks and fairy tales. It was therapy sessions and hard conversations. It was choosing each other when it would have been easier to walk away. It was building a life where no one had to shrink. And that kind of love, the real kind, it was worth every tear, every risk, every dark night. Because on the other side, I found not just a partner, I found home.
5 years after I signed the divorce papers in that quiet Atlanta kitchen, the life I was living felt like someone else's dream, one I had fought tooth and nail to claim as my own. I was 43 now. Gray streaks had started threading through my hair, laugh lines framed my eyes, and my hands carried the faint calluses of someone who still sketched by hand before digitizing everything. The townhouse had been traded for a modest 3-bedroom craftsman in a quiet Decatur neighborhood. Porch swing, small garden out back, enough space for everyone without feeling extravagant. The kids were teenagers now. Mia, 16, fierce and artistic like her mom, already talking about design school. Ethan, 13, still dinosaur-obsessed, but now adding robotics club to his list. Jake and I had been married 3 years. Riley was in college, studying astrophysics, texting us cat memes and bad astronomy puns from her dorm. My business, Sarah Jennings Design Studio, had grown from a laptop on the kitchen table to a real team. We occupied a bright, open loft space downtown, exposed brick, big windows overlooking Peachtree Street, plants everywhere because I refused to work in a sterile office. I had 5 full-time employees now, all women, all with stories similar to mine. Lena, my first hire, had become creative director. There was Priya, no relation to the Empower Her founder, a single mom who handled client relations, Maya, fresh out of art school after leaving an abusive relationship, and 2 others who'd come through my scholarship program. We called it the Sisterhood Office, half-jokingly, but it fit. We celebrated birthdays with cake from the bakery down the street, cried together during tough client weeks, and cheered every win like family. Revenue had crossed 7 figures the previous year. Not billionaire money, but freedom money. Enough to pay generous salaries, offer full benefits, fund paid maternity leave, and still have profit left to reinvest. We won our first national award, a Graphis Gold for a rebrand we did for a women's health nonprofit. The magazine spread followed. Vogue Business called it the quiet revolution in design, how one woman turned divorce into an empire of empowerment. I laughed when I read the headline. Empire? It felt more like survival turned into something beautiful. I published the book that year, Rock Bottom Rebuilt, a guide to starting over when everything falls apart. No ghostwriter. I wrote every word myself. Late nights after the kids were asleep, Jake bringing me tea and rubbing my shoulders when my back ached from hunching over the laptop. It wasn't a how-to manual full of bullet points. It was honest. Divorce, doubt, dating disasters, the viral attack that almost broke me, the small wins that added up. I included sketches for my early days, the coffee mug drawing, the mock branding that landed the Empower Her gig. Readers said it felt like talking to a friend who'd been there. It hit the Amazon bestseller list in self-help and women's business categories. Not overnight sensation, but steady sales. Book clubs invited me, podcasts booked me, women messaged, "Your story gave me permission to start again." One reader, a 42-year-old widow from Texas, sent a handwritten note. "I read your book with a highlighter. Now I'm taking my first graphic design class. Thank you for showing me it's not too late." I started the scholarship fund formally that year, $10,000 grants for women re-entering the workforce or starting businesses after life interruptions. We funded 10 the first cycle. Applications poured in. Single moms, domestic violence survivors, women who'd paused careers for caregiving. Every time I reviewed them, I saw my old self in their words. Awarding the checks felt like closing a circle. Co-parenting with David had settled into something civil. He'd married Lauren. They had a baby girl now. We shared holidays without tension. Thanksgiving at my place one year, his the next. The kids navigated 2 homes with ease. No drama, just maturity born from necessity. One crisp fall evening, after a long day of client meetings, I came home to find Jake in the kitchen making tacos, our Sunday tradition. The kids were at friends' houses. Riley was home from college for the weekend, helping him chop onions. I stood in the doorway watching them laugh over something on her phone and felt a wave so strong it stole my breath. This was it. This was success. Not the awards or the revenue or the magazine covers. It was this. A home full of noise and love. A partner who chose me every day. Kids who were happy and safe. A business that lifted other women instead of just paying bills. A life I'd built from the ashes of one that had crumbled. Jake looked up, saw my face, and crossed the room. "You okay?" I nodded, tears pricking. "More than okay. I'm grateful." He pulled me close. "You earned every bit of it." Later that night, after everyone was asleep, I sat on the porch swing with my sketchbook. I drew the house, the porch light glowing, shadows of the kids' bikes in the yard. Simple lines. Nothing for clients, just for me. I thought about the woman who'd once sat in an empty apartment eating cold pizza, overdrafting $4.89, wondering if she'd ever feel okay again. That woman had no idea what was coming. She'd cry more tears. She'd doubt herself more nights. She'd risk everything on a leap that could have failed. But she'd also laugh louder, love deeper, build higher. She'd create an empire, not of money, but of possibility. And she'd look back one day and realize the life she never imagined possible was the one she was living, right now, right here. I closed the sketchbook, looked up at the stars, and whispered to the woman I used to be, "Thank you for not giving up."
I'm sitting on the porch swing of our craftsman house on a quiet Sunday evening in late summer. The cicadas are loud, the sky is turning that soft Georgia peach color, and the kids, Mia now driving, Ethan taller than me, are inside arguing over whose turn it is on the Xbox. Jake's grilling burgers out back, humming off-key like he always does when he's happy. The string lights I hung years ago are flickering on, same ones from the tiny apartment balcony. Everything feels settled, peaceful, earned. If you had told the woman who once sat on a bare floor eating cold pizza, staring at a $37 overdraft fee, that this would be her life one day, she would have laughed through tears and called you a liar. Back then, the future looked like endless gray, custody schedules, empty weekends, the constant whisper that I'd peaked at 38 and the rest was just coasting downhill. But here's the truth I've learned the hard way. Rock bottom isn't the end of your story. It's the beginning of the one you actually get to write.
Divorce didn't destroy me. It dismantled the version of me that had stopped dreaming. It stripped away the safety nets I'd mistaken for security, marriage, routine, someone else's approval, and left me standing on bare concrete, naked, scared, but alive. And once you're down there with nothing left to lose, you discover something powerful. You can choose what comes next. I chose to cry in the shower instead of pretending I was fine. I chose to pick up a pencil when my hands shook. I chose to apply for jobs I wasn't qualified for. I chose to go on terrible dates and laugh about them later. I chose to leap when the safe path looked easier. I chose therapy when pride told me I didn't need it. I chose to fight back when the internet tried to tear me down. I chose Jake, not because he completed me, but because he saw me whole. I chose to build a business that lifts other women instead of just paying my bills. I chose to walk down the aisle alone, not because I was lonely, but because I'd learned I was enough. Every single one of those choices felt small in the moment, terrifying, pointless even, but they stacked, one on top of the other, until the stack became a foundation, until the foundation became a life. If you're hurting right now, if you're in that dark kitchen with the ring off, or lying awake wondering how you'll pay the next bill, or scrolling your ex's happy new life while yours feels frozen, hear me. This is not the end. This is the raw material. Cry, rage, journal the ugly thoughts, eat the cold pizza, feel every inch of the pain. Don't rush past it. Pain isn't the enemy, numbness is. Then do one small thing. Open the sketchbook, take the online class, apply for the job, download the app or delete it, your call, text a friend who actually listens, walk around the block, buy yourself flowers, even if they're from the grocery store. One thing, then another, then another. You don't need to know the whole map, you just need the next step. And when doubt creeps in, because it will, remember this: the woman who once thought her life was over is now sitting on a porch swing, watching her blended family laugh, running a business that changes lives, wearing a ring she chose, not because she needed it, but because she wanted it. She didn't get here by being perfect, she got here by refusing to stay broken. You're not broken either, you're breaking open. The life waiting on the other side might not look like the one you lost. It might be quieter, messier, fuller in ways you can't imagine yet. It might include new love, or solo adventures, or a career you never dreamed of. It might include days that still hurt, but it will be yours. Completely, fiercely, unapologetically yours. So if no one has told you today, you're worth fighting for. Your story isn't finished. Your best chapters are still unwritten. Keep going, one small, scary, beautiful choice at a time. Because I promise you, from the woman who once thought it was over, it's not over. It's just beginning. And what comes next? It might shock everyone, including you. I close my sketchbook, look up at the stars starting to appear, smile at the sound of Jake calling everyone to dinner. Then I stand, brush off my jeans, and walk inside to the noise, the love, the life I rebuilt, one choice at a time. And I wouldn't trade it for anything.